Man, lots of news in the NFL. Another coach, 18 years in, Mike Tomlin, has decided to leave the Pittsburgh Steelers. We'll get into that in just a minute. I want to start with Todd Monken, the former Bucs wide receiver and offensive coordinator. Of course, the offensive coordinator of the Baltimore Ravens will visit One Buck Place today and meet with Todd Bowles. Now, all these other interviews have been virtual. This one's in person. Todd, I know because he texted me earlier in the morning that he was going to meet with Todd. I know that he's very appreciative of his time in Tampa. He liked coaching here. He likes Jason Light, the organization, and has a real affinity in history with Baker Mayfield. He was with him 1 year in Cleveland in 2019. He didn't call the plays. Freddie Kitchens did that. But, man, he's a big Baker Mayfield guy. Steve, I don't know that they're going to get a Mike McDaniel because I feel like he's going to get a head coaching job. You know, there's just too many teams now. What is it, 9 teams that need head coaches? McDaniel would certainly be near the top of that list of candidates.
Yeah, there's 9 and could be 10 if LaFleur isn't renewed. So.
Could be 10. So,
which is the record. 10 is the record.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, there's a lot of records getting broken these days or approaching getting broken. So, but yeah, so I just feel if you have the opportunity, and I'm sure that Todd will be interviewing them as much as they're interviewing him, but if you have the opportunity to land Todd Monken, assuming he's not getting the head coaching job in Cleveland, which he did interview for, I think on Saturday, you just don't let him out of the building, in my opinion. Like this is, this ends a lot of things. And the other thing I got to thinking about was, like, we don't know where Mike Evans is in terms of what he wants to do. And frankly, he might not know, right? In terms of, do I want to continue playing? Okay, if I'm going to play, do I want to play in Tampa? Would I consider going someplace like, I don't know, Houston, which looks really good right now. But if Todd Monken came back, that could have an impact, absolutely have an impact, because it was earlier in his career, obviously, about 4 years in or so, or actually sooner than that, where Monken and Evans and Chris Godwin all got together, and that was sort of in the early prime of their careers. And so, I mean, I would think that would be well received by Mike. There's just so many good things. He's also, going to be 60 years old in a couple weeks or less. And, when you talk about having what you didn't have, right, they've hired a lot of these younger-ish offensive coordinators who had not called plays at the NFL level. Well, here's a guy that's done it at college and in the NFL, won 2 national titles. Lamar Jackson had his best season ever with the Baltimore Ravens when he threw like 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions or something like that, won the most valuable player award under Monken. So I don't know what it's going to take. I know there's mutual interest. I would think there's a lot of interest on Todd's side. So this could be it. It just seems like it would check almost every box. And not for nothing, but he might not be a one and done guy, right? I mean, he's 60 years old. No one's hired him as a head coach yet. Not saying it couldn't happen or shouldn't happen, but you might have an opportunity to maybe have the same offensive coordinator more than 1 year.
Wow, what a novel concept that would be.
Right. Baker wouldn't know what to do. He's had like 9 in 9 seasons.
Well, I think the Bucs and the Eagles both have now going for their 5th offensive coordinator.
That's crazy. Yeah. And the Eagles won a Super Bowl, for God's sakes. Of course, that's one of the reasons they lost their coordinator, too. He's now the head coach of the New Orleans Saints. But
yeah, both teams lost 2 offensive coordinators to head coaching jobs. So.
That's correct. Yeah. Both of them, yeah. So, yeah, I just think it makes a lot of sense, man. And I don't know, money is usually not the issues. And he told me the last time that he interviewed here, which was before he took the Ravens job, they didn't have a quarterback. Kyle Trask was the only guy under contract. And he said, look, I got Lamar Jackson versus really nobody. I don't know who they're going to wind up with. Had he known it was Baker, would it have changed his mind? Maybe not. You had a chance to work with Lamar Jackson. You feel like you can go to a Super Bowl. But now it's different, now Baker has been here. He knows him. Baker has played well. I don't know, man. I guess it's up to Bowles, who, he's the one piece of the puzzle that doesn't have a history really with Monken, going back to when he was here with Dirk Cutter and those guys. But this seems to be the one. Seems like
he doesn't have a history, but they wanted him back then.
They did want him. You're right. He interviewed him. That's correct.
So it's not like he interviewed him and was like, I'm not sure.
No, that's right. He wasn't wishy-washy. It's just that Todd decided to move on to the Ravens.
I think really it's just to figure out if Monken's the right fit for this team, this offense, this group.
Yeah.
Unless
Yeah.
there's another candidate they really like better, but
Yeah. I mean, look, most of the teams in this league are going young McVay tree, right? So you got Zach Robinson. To me, if you had looked at this list, and Kafka obviously, was what 38 years old, and he was with the Giants and with Brian Daboll, and he did get to call it last year and ended up the interim coach. Did an okay job, right? But you got a guy like Robinson who you competed against, and he's from that McVay tree. He is your Liam Cohen, right? He's that kind of guy. In fact, he was with Liam when Baker went out there for 5 weeks and with the Rams and won. And these other guys, Brian Callahan, and had a lot of success in Cincinnati with Joe Burrow, but did not call plays. Called him, a little bit for Tennessee, and then gave it up last year, and then still got fired. David Shaw has been around forever. I mean, David Shaw is a former Stanford head coach, longest tenured Stanford head coach, won the most games, was the quarterbacks coach of the Lions. He's worked in 2 or 3 different NFL teams. He would be your older elder statement, and then you have a guy like Israel Wolfolk, which I know nothing about, who's quarterbacks coach with the Cardinals. Out of that list, I would say if I was just going to handicap them and not having sat down with any of them, I would think that maybe Zach Robinson is the most attractive but that's kind of what you had. You've had these McVay disciples, and you had success with them. And if you think he's the next, great
well,
great one,
but that's why he could be enticing, is because you've had success with those
that's right,
guys.
absolutely.
And maybe you have to go find another coach in a year, but that means you did well.
That means you knocked it out of the park. That's
Right.
right. Yeah.
I mean, the last 2, you were looking for new offense coordinators because they did well enough to
Get head
get head coaching jobs. So,
Right.
it's what we talked about with Alex Golish, like at USF.
Mm-hmm.
Like if Brian Hartline in 2 or 3 years leaves for a bigger program, that means he did great things here.
That's true. Yeah.
And while it will stink if he leaves, it means he left the program in a better place than what he found it.
Right.
Which is what you want at that level.
No doubt. No doubt. And so, to me, it's going to be between those two right now, at least. And I also think, again, the fact that he's coming in versus virtual, that shows a little bit. I mean, you've done interviews before, Steve. If you ask somebody, if you're doing Zoom calls with candidates and then you ask 1 or 2 in, that means you made it to the final round, right? Generally speaking.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of feels like, and I could be wrong, but is he the right fit for Baker at this point in his career? Is he a right fit for Todd Bowles right now? That's why you're bringing him in.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of these can be done virtual, and that's great.
Mm-hmm.
But you're trying to figure out, is it the right fit for him in his career at this point?
Yeah, that's important too. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'd like to have a guy that if he doesn't become a head coach, feels comfortable to stay here. And I think Todd did. I mean, that's how much he enjoyed living here. Because I've talked to him many times about it. He liked the organization. He liked Jason Light. It's good to have that feeling. But he has every right to interview them and find out, okay, what's your plans? What do we look like on offense? What are we going to do in free agency?
Mm-hmm.
Where is Baker at in his career now versus where he was in 2019 when he had him?
What are the conversations with Mike Evans been?
What's the conversations with Mike Evans?
There may not be decisions yet, but you may have.
Yeah,
the Bucs may have an idea of where his head's at this point.
Sure. Yeah, that certainly would affect your receiving core if Mike comes back, So yeah, I think it's all of that. The one thing I'd say about this job, and a lot of people, and I agree with this, is like, well, Todd looks like a lame duck coach. I don't know if he's lame duck, but certainly he is definitely on the hottest seat in the NFL, perhaps, because I think everybody else that was on the hot seat got fired. But even having said that, it's not a stretch to say, well, let's look at the offense, right? Like if you're coaching offense, your offensive line, Cody Mauch is going to come back, right? Ben Bredesen is going to come back. Tristan Wirfs couldn't wait to have a full off season where he can do some stuff, right? Versus last year when his knee was just inflamed the whole time and they couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. So, you look at that and you go, okay, well, there's a solid offensive line. Now they got to stay healthy. I get it. But last year was just, they just took turns getting hurt. So you feel good about that. And then you go, okay, well, look at the wide receivers. If Mike is back, it's gravy. I mean, and he's always been the guy that sets the tone, but you still have Chris, who will be another year removed from surgery, which means he should be that much better. Having Emeka Buka, having Jalen McMillan to start the year, Tez Johnson did some nice things. I mean, they have a good to really good receiver core. They got to get a tight end. I don't know that Kate Otten is the guy I'm going to spend a ton of money on to bring back, but I definitely need a tight end or two. And running back, I feel okay if we can get Bucky's head squared on. I don't know what's up with him exactly, but you got Bucky Irving. You're not going to have Rashad White. You still have Tucker, and you're probably going to draft a running back somewhere. So the pieces are on offense. I mean, that's where you're the most solid. Again, assuming you have health, which is what they didn't have last year. So you feel like, okay, we can do some stuff with these guys. We can hit the ground running, and now it'll be a new system. It probably will be something that Baker is at least a little familiar with. He's familiar with everything. He's had 9 coordinators, but that could be a big turnaround, right? Like you could see that, much like it did with Liam taking off. But it's a different system. I don't know necessarily that he's in really the McVay school of things. I'm not sure what system he actually takes after, but so there'll be some learning curves, in training camp and off season and all of that. But man, the sooner they can get him locked up, because look at all the staffs. I mean, you got 9 staffs that are going to be forming here soon, and as soon as these places start hiring head coaches, they're going to be coming after Todd. He's going to be on everybody's list. So if you got him in the building, I always say this: don't let him leave the building without a contract. I mean, it would not surprise me if by tomorrow late afternoon we find out that Todd Monken's the offensive coordinator. I think it could happen that quick.
That would be
phenomenal.
Well, it would be. I wouldn't say shocking.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have anticipated happening.
It's probably early. Yeah,
but it's someone they know, and if it happens, like I said, it wouldn't be shocking.
Right. But with all these other jobs open now, you got to believe he's being courted by so many different prospective head coaches, right?
But I would also think the fan base would be happy with that one compared to some of the others.
Yeah, they should be. I mean, like I said, outside of Mike McDaniel, if I was just ranking these guys based on achievement, acumen, all of that impact, like to me, it's him and McDaniel 1B. I just think, and McDaniel's going to get a head coaching job. I'm convinced of that. There's too many teams that need him. He's interviewing for too many jobs. Harbaugh will be the one that has to probably decide first. And then I think after that, you'll see a daisy chain effect, because there's so many teams that want John. But then you think about this: where is John Harbaugh going, and what is he? He obviously, as the story goes, he quit because they wanted him to fire Monken and wouldn't. Why wouldn't Todd Monken then, go someplace where John Harbaugh goes, which is also a possibility. He might be waiting to see what John does. Reportedly John wants $20 million a year, and he wants $10 million a year for his assistants. So, he's going to take care of his guys, and he's going to get it. He's going to get whatever he wants, I believe. Not whatever he wants, but at least if those are the parameters, if that's the table you're going to sit down to play poker at, what the ante is. So I think that that Monken would be then somebody that that John Harbaugh might want to retain. Maybe not. Maybe he's seen enough and wants to move on, do something else, or it doesn't fit the quarterback or wherever he's going. But there's definitely a market for Monken as an offensive coordinator. So we'll see. We'll see where it goes. I think it's good news. I was really glad he was coming in, and he's been here. He didn't need to come in, right? But he wants to meet with Todd, see where their minds lined up, and kind of go from there. So yeah, they concluded their virtual call that they had with Kafka, and I don't know, how many more, if Monken doesn't take it, how many more like guys they would necessarily bring in. I guess we'll have to see what happens to the offensive coordinators. There's a lot of guys getting let go, obviously, so there could be more names. But if you can get this piece tied up sooner than later, then you can hire a quarterbacks coach. Then you can focus on the defensive positions that you need, and it'll probably come together here probably in short order, because I do think that the team that can make offers to these assistant coaches with all the coaching staffs that are going to be forming. They got 9 coaching staffs. That's a lot of guys out of work, a lot of guys looking for jobs, a lot of good coaches that are available right now. If you can get on top of that and start getting the ones in you really want, it can make a big difference. So we shall see. Also, in coaching news, and it's been a good 18 years. Mike Tomlin has called it a career, at least in Pittsburgh. He called a meeting to tell his team at around 2 p.m. in the afternoon. And according to my sources, Mike Tomlin may not go back into football right away. So here's the deal with Tomlin. It's interesting because he's walking away, but there's still a year left on his contract. And because of that, if a team were inclined to want Mike Tomlin and they could convince him to coach, they then would have to give up compensation, much like the situation was with Sean Payton when he left the Saints. He went to television for a year. Saints own his rights. And so, for him to go to Denver, they had to give up some draft pick compensation. Now, it's probably not going to be the John Gruden deal, 2 1s, 2 2s, and $8 million. But it is one more step that a team would have to make to sign him, to hire him. So I was going back and forth with Ronnie Barber and some others about Mike T. And I don't think anybody really knows, except that, man, when you do 19 years of anything, like this podcast, for example,
it's only been 8. It's only been 8.
Sorry. You poured a lot into it. You know what I'm saying? And there really is this sort of like, I would just imagine for Mike, it's like, he's been going so hard for so long in the same place that maybe he just wants a reset before he makes a decision about whether he wants to coach again or not. When you've done something that successfully for that long, the first thing you probably want to do is just kind of take a step back and decompress. And I think television, knowing his relationship with Jay Glazer on Fox, the early money is that if he goes to TV, it will be joining Jay on Fox. And I don't know whether Mike will be great on TV or bad. I don't really have a big opinion on it. I think I love talking to him anytime, but if you could do that for a year, kind of recalibrate, sort of see what the landscape is in terms of, teams that might be available, quarterbacks. I assure you this, if he goes to another team, it'll be one with a good quarterback. It seems like that little bridge, little gap year, if you will, would serve him really well in television. That's kind of what I think he's going to do. And frankly, I think he's more than hinted at it because there's too many reports that say that that's what he's going to do.
Well, the difference between like him and Harbaugh is Harbaugh was fired.
That's
right.
Says,
I want to coach.
That's right.
Tomlin stepped away. He said, I'm done. Like, so I believe he's not going to coach this year.
I don't either.
Because I'm not sure, you're going to trade for him. You got to make sure he wants to coach for you.
Sure.
But I don't think any team's going to want to give up draft picks for that. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think because he stepped away, I believe, he's going to go do TV or something for a year. Or maybe more. Who knows? I mean, maybe he's done.
He could be.
You might do a year of TV and go, hey, I really like this. We'll see.
And for some guys, like, and I think you're talking about a studio job, not one where like Bruce Arians was on the road every week. I mean, Bruce told me that chewed him up. It is worse than coaching because now you have a game every week on the road.
You mean Fox isn't going to replace Brady and put him on the number 1 team?
It'd be interesting. That would be interesting. Probably not. But I think I think he's gonna be a studio guy.
Yeah, I would think so.
But people are still, well, the whole question, and Rondi and others are like, we'll see if he stays done. We'll see if that's the case. But he's had an unbelievable run. He's a Hall of Fame coach, whether people agree with that or not. He is. I think
19 seasons and not one losing season.
Right. And even though, the last 7 playoff appearances or 6 or 7 playoff appearances.
7. Yep.
Is it 7? Ended with an early exit. Still has a Super Bowl ring, just incredible record. So he's going to walk into Canton one day of his choosing. And I think, I don't know. I don't know what's in his heart. I don't know that he knows, and that's why I think this year, this gap year, whether it's television, he might find that, you know, it's a good lifestyle, right? You're still in the game. You have a big presence. I mean, we know what these ratings are for these studio shows and these games, and and yet you can have a little bit of a life too. You know, you're not coaching, you're not putting in the hours those guys did. Still getting paid plenty of money, that's for sure. Not that he needs it, but you know, I think if he called it a career, it's good enough. You know, the only thing you would miss is just like, you know, belonging to a team, being able to lead, you know, a team to you know, onto the field and on Sundays and be part of a program like that. But he worked for one of the greatest organizations and one of the greatest families in football. You know, the Rooney family, they got two of them in the Hall of Fame, and you know, it's a storied franchise. And so, you know, it'd be tough to not find something similar to that you were used to. But you know, that's the great thing, is that he's not in a hurry. He can do that. He can do TV. He can take his time. I don't think he's gonna. I don't think it would surprise me if he coached next year. I just don't. It doesn't feel like he's going to do it that way. But we'll see. He's been pretty transparent. A lot of people knew that this. A lot of people really do believe that this was his last year. You know, I remember seeing him in Pittsburgh because the Bucs were up there for the preseason game, and he walked up to me and goes, "Damn, Stroud, you've been doing this longer than me." I was like, "Oh yeah, way longer than you. Thank you." Because Mike T came, what was it, in like maybe '98, something like that, after Herm Edwards left, and man, he was, what was he, 29 years old, 30 years old. I know that guys like Rondy Barber were older than him. John Lynch was older, at least, and he was coaching those dudes. And you know, so yeah, long time ago, a lot of coaching, man. And man, the hours, head coaches, geez, that's a lot of work. But what a career! So it was fun to see, you know, sort of the speculation and tributes with that. This has been an unbelievable year in the NFL in terms of coaches. Like I don't know where anybody's going to wind up right now. It's going to be kind of crazy. But
Well, like I said, we may not even know all the candidates yet in
it's
the
true.
openings if LaFleur isn't renewed. So
That's true. And people will inevitably ask, would you still fire Bowles if you could get Tomlin? And I'm just, I guess you never say never, but never, right? Like, you're interviewing coaches right now under the auspices of them coming and working for Todd Bowles. It'd be really hard to go back and say, "Hey, you know what? I know we did this interview as if you know Todd Bowles was the coach. What if it were, you know, somebody else?" And I get why people cling to that, and you know, maybe the Glazers are just unorthodox enough to say, well, you know, something else came along, a prettier girl or whatever. But I really think people need to kind of accept that Bowles is going to be back and hope that they put together a really, really good staff on both sides of the ball, because defensively they're going to have to get better. Special teams is going to be a huge hire, you know, for this coaching staff. But if you put it back together the right way and you got the right coaches, we saw what Liam Cohen did, you know, what difference he made in Jacksonville, what difference he made in Tampa, and Baker Mayfield having his best year ever, you know, 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, too many interceptions, but still 41 touchdowns. So yeah, you know, this thing can turn around quickly and turn back around quickly. But you know, you got to get the right coaches, because we know that coaches matter in this league. There's no question about that. All right. What else we got? The Lightning coming up in just a second. But first, hey, get on down to Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Have you guys been there? Why not? You know where that is. It's a great mall, by the way. And the Breitling Company has been making Swiss watches now for over 140 years. And they've been in International Plaza for going on 6 years now. Here's what you do. Go to the center of the mall, second floor. That's where you're going to find Breitling Boutique. Go in and spend some time. I'm telling you, the customer service is spectacular. They deal with a lot of pro athletes and celebrities, and they're going to treat you exactly the same way. Go in, have a drink, find out about their beautiful products. For the men, the men's watches, the Navatimers, the chronomats that they're known for. Also women's watches, sports watches in particular, extremely durable, beautiful, and your wife or girlfriend can choose from just a whole array of different colored wristbands. And the biggest thing is, as you approach the store, notice in the window on the left, there's these three letters, NFL. and that means that it is an NFL collection of team watches, and it's only while supplies last. And believe me, they're going and going, and they're going to be gone, right? But in the window, the last time I was at the mall, they had the Buccaneers team watch, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the team color and the face of the watch of these chronomount watches, and then the logos inside. I'm telling you, these are collector's items and one of the best timepieces you'll ever wear as well. It's Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure when you go, you let them know that you heard about it here on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, so the Lightning busy making history, still making history, building on history. They get their 11th win in a row. This one went to a little overtime action, a little shootout action, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And Bassi was spectacular. Kucherov with the game winner in the shootout. Man, this team just keeps rolling and rolling, and now they're going to have to do it a little bit without Braden Point, at least.
They will. Braden Point, John Cooper updated. Not the worst case scenario. Season's definitely not over. Considered week to week at this point, but I'm guessing at least a few weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If I had to guess, he's not back with the Lightning until after the Olympic break.
Now, do you think the Olympics are probably gone for him? That's a huge blow to Team Canada, by the way.
If you're week to week in 3 weeks, could you be back? Maybe.
Yeah.
I don't know if he plays for the Lightning before the Olympic break. Maybe he gets a game or two in.
Yeah.
I guess it just kind of depends, but definitely he said season's not over, which, that was the first worry, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You're already into mid-January. So
if they don't say season ending, man, that's as good a news as you can hope for,
Yep.
right? The way it looked.
Yep.
So
that was good news, but the Lightning get their 11th straight win. That ties a franchise record, which was set back in January and February of 2020, right before COVID shut that season down. And then the Lightning went on to win the Stanley Cup in the bubble. It's the longest win streak in the NHL this season. Colorado's had 2 10-game win streaks, but no one's had an 11.
Ties a club record, as you mentioned.
Yes, yep.
Yep.
And they're just rolling. And they're now back in first place in the Eastern Conference as the teams around them. Red Wings lost. The Hurricanes lost. Canadians lost in overtime. So the teams around them lost some points for a change.
What's the deal with Detroit, man? All of a sudden, Stevie Yzerman's put together a juggernaut up there in Detroit.
Yeah, I mean they've had the talent. Todd McClellan's doing good up there as a coach, and they're getting decent goaltending, which has always been a bugaboo.
Yeah, man, I was looking at the Penguins, who they played the other night when they got their 11th win. The Penguins are an example of what the Lightning could have done wrong, which is, they let Steven Stamkos go at age 34. He got like a 4-year deal, $8 million a year guaranteed or whatever. But, man, you look at the Penguins, all those guys are 38, 39 years old. Their core, the Sid Crosbys and that sort of thing. I think that's what you don't want to do, right? Like you want to continue to, build around those guys as they age, but it's almost as if Pittsburgh's too old at this point.
Yeah, I mean it's the hard part about aging players.
Absolutely,
their skills deteriorate, and the player's the last one to realize it happened.
That's right.
And if you just want to go on nostalgia, and this player's been so great for us, we have to keep him at all costs. It's going to hurt you. No, I mean, Sid Crosby's still fantastic, but a lot of the players around him.
Is he, though? Is he still fantastic?
I'd say he's really good. Maybe he's not fantastic.
Okay.
I mean, he's not the best player in the planet anymore. But he's also not on a contract that's breaking the bank up there either.
Right.
So the whole point is GMs have to try to get everyone at their proper value. That's what Julian Breezeboss talked about for several seasons now. And even at his midseason chat last week about Darren Radish, who's having a career year. And he says, we're not going to sign him yet. We want to wait. And I want to get a bigger sample size to see if this is this really a breakout year and this is what he is going forward, or is this just a hot streak he's on? And by waiting, it may cost him more. But he wants to make sure he's got him at a number that is fair for both sides. right? I mean, you want the player to be happy, but you don't want to overpay for a player that isn't performing up to their value. I mean, that's in a salary cap world, particularly in the NHL, which is a hard salary cap. In the NFL, you can do lots of things with voidable years down the future in this and kick money down the road. The NHL, you can't do that. Once you lock a player in, that's their AAV, and that goes against your hard cap. So you want to make sure you're not overpaying players. Like the Lightning wanted to keep Steven Stamkos. They wanted to keep Andre Palat and Alex Killorn and Blake Coleman and go through the list, right? They didn't want to lose any of those guys, but not the prices they got elsewhere. And maybe Blake Coleman they would have wanted to, but they just didn't have the cap space because the cap ended up flat for years. But, it's all about a GM's job. One of the things Bill Belichick got praised for years was, he would part with the player 1 year too soon rather than 1 year too late.
Yeah, and look, that's the hardest thing to do in sports. It just is, right? You got to make those decisions with legacy players. And I'll be honest with you, like Levante David was on a podcast just the other day, and he revealed, that, hey, look, he had a knee injury that required it to be drained every week. Now, I've had a meniscus tear, and I did too much too early, and I had one of those needles stuck in me, and I swear to God, I never want to have that again. It does provide instant relief. They took 50 cc's of fluid out of my knee one day. For a guy to have to do that to play in the National Football League is insane. And I saw Jurevicius do it the year after the Super Bowl. So you start to find out that, some of these guys are a lot more hurt than they appear. That's why he didn't look very fast in addition to just, getting older. But I think like that's an instance, and he didn't commit to retirement, but again, you read between the lines, you can see which way he's leaning clearly. And I think that,
well, the Bucs may help him on that because I don't think the Bucs are going to offer him a deal.
Well, probably
or at
not.
least not anywhere near what he was making this year.
No, and I, rightfully they would prefer he just make a decision, right? Do you want to play, and then we'll discuss whether or not there's money for you and what your role would be.
Right.
But they're going to let him decide whether he wants to play. And look, he came and thanked us after this final game. I mean, you don't have many guys stand up there and gloss the media a little bit, but when you see this podcast, you'll realize that he's all too aware that his play was not his standard, right? And because of that, and because of the injury, and he talked about his daughter and all the things that are important to him outside of football. So it just feels like he knows it's time. But I think you're going back to talking about the sentimentality. I think organizations make that mistake. I'm not sure that Jason Light should have brought Levante David back. And you could, and I'm not saying you should, but you could even question whether they were too caught up in their feels with Mike Evans, right, 2 years ago at $20.5 million. And certainly you could say, what about Chris Godwin, who they signed to a similar deal, $20.5 million a year, while he was sitting there with his ankle turned the wrong way? I mean, he was injured, and they signed him to a 3-year contract.
So I would say on those, the problem with Levante is they almost had to sign him because they had nobody else.
Well, that's true. Yeah, the position was barren.
Because they haven't addressed that need.
Correct.
That you kind of were stuck.
You were hoping,
You were hoping, and and Levante David did okay this year. He wasn't.
Well, coming off the year before, he had 122 tackles, 5.5 sacks. I mean, he did some stuff, right? He had some numbers. So
absolutely. Mike Evans, I think, probably earned his deal. I mean, you got hurt this year.
Yeah, but prior to that,
but the 2 years he was very productive when he was healthy.
1,000 yards. I mean, that's his standard.
The broken clavicle or whatever, like that's
happens.
Had nothing to do with age or anything. It's just the way he landed.
Right.
Chris Godwin is probably the one you go,
Yeah. Second time that he's been injured that they've signed this contract after the knee injury, and then now.
And because you had Mike Evans, and because granted you didn't know you're going to draft Ibuka in this, but that's the Godwin in hindsight's the one you probably went. That's the one I'd like to take back and use that money elsewhere.
Sure, and it was a 3-year deal on top of that. So
he's love Chris Godwin, and he's still a good player, and But, in a salary cap world, like I said, it's not endless resources.
Right.
It's not college football where you just find more donors to pay more money and get more
That's right.
players.
It was that NIL money for Chris Godwin. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think all those points are valid, and I also think that the calculus has changed now because you do have a Mecca Buka, you do have a Tez Johnson, you do have a Jalen McMillan for coming off a fractured neck. The guy looked really good. I mean, his first or second game back, he had over 100 yards. So you're kind of loaded, but we saw also that you might need them all because they were down to just a Mecca and Sterling Shepard and these kind of guys before long last year. So you can't have too many good players, but I do think the receiver position, the future is kind of here. And I also wonder after, Evans watched that Houston game and you see how good that defense is and how long it's going to be good for forever. If he's not thinking, you know what, I think and we'll find out when they go to New England, but I think maybe the Texans are closer to a Super Bowl than we would be, than the Bucs would be. So he might
If
look at
defense
that.
wins championships, they definitely are.
Oh, and they do, man. They do, man. Those guys just got after it. It's just so fun to watch. It reminded me of some of the Bucs defenses in the past. When you got that kind of pursuit and that kind of speed, they said something interesting, which is the anti-Bowls, and that is that their defense is fairly simplistic. That if anybody gets stuck on something, in terms of complexity, and they go, it's just a lot of moving parts. I'm not sure I got this. They will make it so that it's more simple, but they can play faster, and they play really fast. They do it with speed, the way the Bucs did, and I think sometimes that Bowles, has too much on the menu. You ever go to one of those restaurants where you're like, man, I like it all, but I wish I didn't have so many choices. Like Cheesecake Factory or something like that. You're like, it all looks good, but I don't know. I could go for this or this or this. It's just too much. I'm overwhelmed by it. Well, I think sometimes that's Todd's defense, right? It all looks good, but you can't sit down and eat all of it. So you need to pick the best that you feel. And sometimes I think that simpler is better as long as you got the right players that can play fast. And Houston has the right players. I mean, Danielle Hunter and those guys, wow. They're just something else. Two defensive touchdowns.
It's okay to have a complicated defense or offense or whatever
right.
side it is.
Sure.
If you have the players that can execute.
That's correct. There you go.
Too many coaches try to, jam it, this you have to do my system.
Yeah.
But if you don't have the players that can execute that system, what good is it going to be?
It hurts you. You got to be adaptive. You got to do what the players can do, not just, square peg in a round hole. Hey, this is what we run. That's the worst thing I ever hear in sports sometimes.
You got to sit there and go, what pieces do I have? What chess pieces do I have? A term Todd loves to use.
Sure.
And then how can I use those chess pieces effectively?
Yeah. And can I communicate it all? And can our guys get it if we're dealing with a lot of young players? It's still a very young team, especially on defense. Remove Levante from the equation and perhaps Vita Vea. This is a young football team. So I do think that Todd had too many items on the menu last year. And I think the reason why Houston's playing so well is they're simple but fast, and they execute, and they just get after you. And it would not surprise me, although I think New England will win, but it would not surprise me if Houston makes it to the AFC Championship game and maybe beyond, because they have that kind of defense. If you say defense wins championships, that's the kind of defense they have. So they'll need some help from their offense. But again, if you're Mike Evans and you're sitting there watching, you're going, well, Tank Dell, and then, okay, who else? Like, what if they had me? It doesn't take many points to win. Well, we'll see. I mean, but getting back to our discussion with the Monken, like who's coordinator, like Mike's going to want to know all those answers. And the biggest thing, and there's no way around this, like, will he take a hometown discount? Maybe, sure. But there's a bag out there for him the same way there was and has been for Devontae Adams, who's been to about 3 or 4 teams since he left Green Bay. And if Mike wants to chase the money and or the rings, he can do both. I really believe that. So it's going to be probably a
well, and Houston would be home.
Houston would be home.
It's not like
special
I'm
place
going to Seattle or
that's right.
LA or Green Bay.
That's right.
I'm going home where I grew up.
And Mike, not unlike a lot of players, but some players, like a lot of players will move to the city that they're playing in, and that will be their residence year round. Baker Mayfield, for example. Mike has lived in 2 states for his whole career. Like he still lives in Texas half the year. His kids are homeschooled, right? Because that's usually the biggest problem. It's like, well, we can't go back and forth because our kids are in school. Well, theirs are homeschooled for a reason, and yet they live in 2 different states. And so if he were to go to Texas, he would have to just maintain one residence and not go back and forth, and that would be stability in and of itself for his family. It's just all those things to consider. I'm sure that he's batting around or will be batting around at some point. But the podcast was interesting with Levante, just him talking realistically about what he was challenged to do last year, and just reading between the lines, I think he's through, but he's not ready to make that declaration yet. And whenever that comes, we'll all know it together. All right. Well, make sure you guys, again, get on down to Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the beautiful watches, NFL team watches for your wife, your girlfriend as well. Let them know you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. We've got more Bucs news when Todd Monken sits down today on Wednesday with Todd Bowles and see if, in fact, they can strike some accord and maybe this thing can be wrapped up sooner than later. We'll be following that on TampaBay.com and in the Tampa Bay Times. And the Lightning come home for a couple of days and go back on the road, right?
Yeah, by the time you're hearing this podcast, they're back in Tampa. They'll have Wednesday off. They'll have a practice Thursday morning. Then they head to St. Louis for a game Friday night, and they're in Dallas Sunday afternoon.
This crazy streak that we're watching, man, it's been unbelievable. Just the hottest team in hockey this year. And like Cooper said, somebody asked him, what do you think about the Rookies? He goes, well, it's a lot better than the 2-6 or 2-7 we started.
2-4-1 was the start.
Is that what it was? Wow. Yeah. I got to see one of those games, but that's
why you're not invited back.
I know, and I legitimately appreciate that, and I've tried to stay away until they lose at least, because I feel like if I did come during the streak, that would definitely be it. So I don't want to ruin the streak, so I'm going to wait until they lose a game, and then maybe. But the
Lightning, by the way, passed the Wild tonight for the third best record in hockey, or third best points.
Third best in points? Wow.
Yep. So just behind Colorado and Dallas.
But only a few behind those two, right?
Dallas are only a couple points back. Colorado's way ahead of everyone.
Oh, they're way ahead. Yeah, they were like 30-4 or something like that.
Yeah. Yep.
All right. Well, it's going to shaping up to be a great season, and then we're going to have the break for the Olympics and all of that. Winter Olympics around the corner, by the way, in case you guys didn't know. Again, thanks for listening. As always, for Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.